All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another time where I just talk to a camera for a little bit. Money. Um, First things first. I actually had someone claim, and I think they followed through on this, claimed that because I was bringing drama into D&D or something like that, that they were not going to watch me anymore. I used a clickbait title on this specifically because this is something I think is important information. It is something that I recently saw on Twitter that has been going around for a while now, and I have a unique perspective on it that I haven't seen expressed anywhere else. So when I comment on drama and things like that, it's generally because I'm trying to get information out there as much as possible. So I will every so often I will use clickbait titles and I will talk about drama because I feel like I have a unique perspective and I think it will help resolve whatever the issue is. Also, and I have to admit this, those videos get a lot more views than anything else I do, and I actually get new subscribers from videos where I talk about drama. I would assume because they come for the drama, but they stay for the fact that I actually bring up valid points, and I tend not to demonize too many people. So I don't actually feed the drama, I kind of dissipate it. So if you're really upset that I'm talking about more drama that isn't really drama, just kind of inspired me to talk about something, then I don't know what to say. But, that being said, drama! Okay, not really. There was a post on to Twitter. I'm gonna look up the post, simply because I like the post. Yes, I want to see. What? Stop that. It's really not that hard. Okay, so this is the post. It's by Dragna Carta, DM of Curses Strahd something. He has a really long name. He or she or they, I don't know their pronouns. They may even have their pronouns. He, him. So I do know the pronouns. He. A comment just saw a Reddit post asking, what is Matt Mercer doing to get his players so invested in the game? Matt Mercer isn't doing anything. Players like DMs can be good or bad, and Matt Mercer has good players. This is a really, really valid point that a lot of people tend to ignore when they look at Critical Role. And when they talk about the DMs in general, it's like, well, it's the DM's job to motivate the players. It's DM's job. No, it's not. The DM is one of the players. They just have a different role. That's all it is. But everyone should be equally invested in the game because everyone should be having fun. This idea that the DM is somehow a different thing, that they're no longer the player, or they have these extra responsibilities that don't exist for anyone else, isn't a thing. They're all players, they're just playing different roles, and the DM's role involves them playing a lot of little characters, while the player's role involves them playing a main character. That's not the thing that inspired me, though. The thing that inspired me was the next post, which is, also, to those insisting that the players are only this invested because they're paid, there are clips of their original home game available on YouTube. They were invested in the game before Critical Role was ever a thing. Stop underestimating what good players are capable of. Now, this post actually reminded me of something that I actually learned in college. If you are unaware, as much as on here I talk about Dungeons and Dragons and training and all that stuff, I actually have a bachelor's degree. I have a bachelor's of science in business marketing management. That's the official title of my bachelor's degree. And what that degree entailed was it's effectively a... Wow, I've got something in my eye and it is killing me. Urgh. What it effectively is it is a combination business management and marketing degree. So I learned equal parts business management and marketing. And it involved me learning a lot of different things. The two things that I found that I enjoyed the most were economics. I love economics. It is, in my opinion, it is one of the most fascinating subjects in the world, because so many people have no idea what economics is. They just think economics, it's money. No, it's actually a science. And it's a really, really interesting science based in a lot around the idea of motivation. And then the other thing I really, really enjoyed was project management. And for those of you that are unaware, project management is a specific form of business management that is specifically tailored to bringing a project from inception all the way to completion. And it is a remarkably complex topic. Literally every business in the world has somewhere in its function a project manager. Even like sole proprietorships, you will have the sole proprietor will have to use some project management techniques, because project management is how you decide to do something and then do it. And it's a really, really fascinating thing. But one of the key aspects of project management, there was an entire section in both the project management courses that I took, and then just the general business management courses I took, about motivation. And now you may start to see why both economics and project management called out to me so long. They both really hinge on the idea of motivation. And it's one of the other reasons why I also, some of the stuff that you learn in business school, specific if you're going to do business management, is you learn a little bit of psychology. And I went off the deep end with the psychology because my mother actually has a master's degree in psychology and was getting it. She started college the same year I started college the first time, and she did a hell of a lot better in her first run in college than I did when I went to college for the first time. I think I had I started with a 3.2, which is not an amazing GPA if you're not familiar with like the GPA system we use in the states here. Straight A's is a 4.0. Straight B's is 3, straight D's is a 2, and then straight F's is a 1, effectively, I think. I don't think you can have... I think somewhere in there... oh, wait, no, it's... A's are 4, B's are 3, C's are 2, D's are 1s, F's are 0s. There we go. I knew I was missing a letter in there somewhere. Anyway, so I effectively had like a B+ average the first time I went. It wasn't for lack of knowledge or anything. A lot of it was just the fact that I hated school vehemently. But I aced all my acting classes and I aced all my music classes, which are the things that I actually cared about. Everything else, my gen ed stuff, I just did B's in because I didn't care. But anyway, I dropped out of college then. I went back to college years later, and that's when I got my degree in business. And so my mother went and got her master's in psychology and had a lot of her textbooks that she didn't sell back. So I got to read those, and I've always been really interested in psychology, and the psychology of motivation is really, really fascinating. And my personal opinion is like psychology of motivation is essential reading if you want to get into any sort of management position, because understanding how to motivate your employees is the most important job you have as a manager. And I actually gave a reply to the Twitter thread about them being paid. And I'm going to read the reply here, and then I'm going to go into more specifics. Fun fact from someone with a business management degree: money is not an effective motivator. The effects are short-term, and the diminishing returns happen much faster than other forms of motivation. So the idea that the money is why they do this years later literally can't be true. And I stand by that. That was something that I learned in my business management classes. That was something that I learned in my project management classes. And you even learn about it a little bit when you're studying economics, because economics involves money almost exclusively. Like money and economics are intertwined. And that is, money is not an effective motivator. There have been tons of studies that have shown money does not motivate very well. And when I talk about diminishing returns, for anyone that doesn't know what diminishing returns is, diminishing returns is basically the idea that when you do something once, you will get this. Like maybe, if I have a well and it's a pump well, and so you push the handle, and the first time you get no water out. The second time you get a little water out. And the third time, as you pump more and more, you will eventually get more water. But eventually you'll hit a point of diminishing returns where it doesn't matter how much you pump, more water won't come out any faster because you've hit a limit. So every single additional pump, the additional effort that you put into it is a diminishing return. The more effort you put in, does not lead, or it requires more and more effort to get the same output. Now, the pump example is actually a really bad example of it because the longer you pump, the longer it comes out. But if you're specifically just looking about the amount of water that comes out from a single pump, then that's diminishing returns. The more you do something, the less of an effect it has, or the more you have to do something to get the same effect. Both of those are kind of examples of diminishing returns, just on opposite ends. So how is money a diminishing return? Well, they've actually done studies and they've shown that if the sole motivator for someone in their job is their paycheck, they're generally not going to be a very motivated person because money only motivates so far. If the only reason your people are working for you is for money, they're going to do the bare minimum absolutely necessary in order to get their paycheck. And there's a bunch of studies that have shown exactly why this is. And probably one of the biggest things is money is worthless. What do you mean money's not worth it? It is. Money is literally just a piece of paper with pictures on it. It's very rare paper and it's very controlled paper, but it's a piece of paper with pictures on it and numbers. That's all it is. Money itself is completely worthless. You cannot build with money. You cannot eat money. It doesn't burn very well. You can't really use it for insulation. It's not very good for that. There's literally nothing that money is good for until it is ascribed value. And the value for money is not a direct one-to-one ratio. We've talked about, I don't know if we talked about inflation here, but inflation is being talked about a lot in society right now, probably because we're going through massive inflation in the States. Inflation is an example of how the value of money is completely flexible. Things that are inflexible are things like food. Food is always going to be valuable, and because of that, the price of food will increase when inflation starts happening. But the number of food that you use to get money doesn't. The money changes, the food doesn't, because food is actually useful. And so because of that, one of the reasons that money is not a great motivator is the idea that money isn't actually what is motivating people that are quote unquote motivated by money. Money is a representation of other things. Generally, money represents two different things: power and things, actual items. So for most people, when they're working a job, they are thinking either my paycheck gives me more power to do the things I want, or my paycheck gives me this. As someone that lived paycheck to paycheck, I never thought about numerical values of money. It's like, oh wow, I just got my paycheck for this week. That's great. I now have this much money. My thought process always instantly went, okay, now I have rent covered because rent costs this much. I have this many meals covered. I have this many leisure activities covered. Like, I instantly translated it into things. And people that live near the poverty line or below the poverty line, that is a really, really common way to think about money. You don't think about dollar amounts. You think explicitly in the idea of this is how many meals, this is how many months rent. You justify everything by, well, that's a week's worth of rent, so I can't afford that. Or That's, that's 2 days worth of food. Am I willing to trade 2 days worth of food for a video game? No, I'm not willing to do that. So I won't get that because 2 days worth of food is more valuable than one video game. Things like that. Like that is a really, really common thing. On the other end, money does represent power. The ability to just look at something and go, I want that, I can have it. Or the ability to pay people to do things for you. Like, I don't want to do that, so I can pay someone to do it for me. Again, the money doesn't really matter. It's the idea that it gives you power. So those are technically the two motivating factors built in to money. And you can kind of get a third kind of sub factor with the idea of kind of prestige coming along with money, though that tends to associate a little bit more with the idea of power. But yeah, so one of the reasons that money is not a really effective motivator is because it's a middleman effectively. If you're motivating someone by money, you are either motivating them by want of things or want of power or prestige. So by giving them the money and then making them go out to get that, you are adding additional steps for their motivation. That's one of the reasons why when you learn about motivation, you learn very, very quickly if you just offer your employees raises and things like that, you're going to have a very unmotivated staff. However, significantly more valuable than motivating through money is motivating through praise, specifically public appreciation. Singling employees out in front of their peers to say what a good job they did is an incredibly effective motivator if done correctly. If you only ever single out a single employee and it's always the same employee for doing the same thing over and over again, it turns into a negative motivator and it makes everyone resent them. So that's a bad thing. But if you, and it has to be a little bit randomized, if you randomly pick out employees and goes, hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know, Jill over here, she just made her 4th sale of the day. That is absolutely exceptional. She's doing a phenomenal job. And I just wanted everyone to know what an essential part of this business that she is. That is an incredibly valuable motivating tool. Another really valuable motivating tool is non-public appreciation. We're literally just taking someone aside and saying to them, one-to-one meeting, hey, I just wanted to let you know you're doing a really, really great job, and I'm really happy that you're here. I remember when I first started working for a company that shall remain nameless, I'd been working, I think maybe for a couple of weeks, and I was hired by this dude named Skip. His actual name was Scott, and he had a last name too, but I'm not gonna put him on blast. But anyway, Scott had everyone call him Skip, and he was the store manager. And I interviewed with him, and I tried really, really hard for this interview because I 100% needed food. We'll talk about that motivation in just a second here. Skip hired me on the spot. He said, hey, when can you start? And I was like, hey, I'd love to start. It'd be really, really cool. And over the next couple of weeks, they found out that I was really, really good at sales. I had literally just come from a 100% commission sales job, which sucked really, really bad. And I hated it. But because of that, I had learned how to become a very effective salesman because not selling things meant I didn't get food. And that's a pretty good motivator. Again, we'll talk about that in just a second. So what ended up happening is when it translated to this other business that did have a sales aspect in it, we sold things like computers and printers and service plans and things like that. I learned exceptionally quickly how to sell them because that's my old job. That's what you had to do. If you didn't learn quick and you didn't learn how to sell things instantly, you didn't eat. You didn't pay rent because you got literally paid nothing if you did make a sale. And I had a lot of days where I sold nothing. So anyway, what ended up happening is like a couple weeks into my shift, we get a phone call on the store phone, which they had phones all throughout the store. So if a phone call came in, you could literally take it anywhere in the store. And I hear we all wore headsets. I hear over the headset, "Hey, Jody, someone Skip's on the phone for you." Skip is a store manager. If you've ever been working and the store manager calls the store and asks to talk to you specifically, either you've done something very, very right, or what was going on in my brain was you've done something very, very wrong. When the store manager is not there, they don't want to be thinking about this as a store. I know this from personal experience. So I was really worried. I picked up the phone. I'm like, "Hey, Skip, what's up?" It's like, "Hey, Jody, I just heard you got another sale today." "Yeah, yeah. Is there a problem?" He's like, "No. I wanted to tell you, I'm really glad that we hired you. You've been doing such a great job, and I just want to let you know that I'm really glad that you work for us. You've become an essential part of the team." And this is after I'd been there for it is either a couple of weeks or maybe a month or two, but it was very, very early in my career. And yeah, he just randomly called up. No one else in the store knew about it. Just me. Just randomly called up and said, "Hey, I'm really glad that you're a part of our company and you've been doing a really great job." I became the most motivated person ever. I was so motivated that I got promoted to a management position 2 months before I was eligible to apply for a management position. You had to have, I think, 6 months of experience working for the store or working anywhere in retail, and I didn't have any of that experience. And yet I went and I applied and I got the job. Without argument. It wasn't like, "Oh, it's a close thing." No, they gave me the job. I was that good. Yeah, it was a huge deal for me. So that is a significantly better motivator than money. And it technically involves the same process loop of money, just cutting out the middleman. It's literally, okay, well, if the thing that you're looking for from your money is prestige or power, well, both of those will come from just being praised. Being praised publicly gives you prestige among other people and does give you power because it creates an idea that you know what you're doing. Being praised privately gives you your own personal prestige and makes you feel wanted. Both of those significantly better motivators than money. Significantly less chance of diminishing returns, and people are more motivated by a single instance of praise than they are by multiple pay increases. On the other side, we have the things idea. This is actually something that sales managers use all the time. They will have sales contests, which actually dips into two different versions of motivation. One is the idea of want for things. The other is the idea of competition. Competition can be a great motivator if you use it correctly. It can also be a horrible demotivator if you use it poorly. But sales managers all the time will run sales contests and the things like that, and they will offer actual gifts. Some of them offer cash. They're really not that effective. Again, from being a sales manager and knowing other sales managers, just giving out money is not a really effective thing. Even just giving out candy bars. I'm not kidding about this. My brother actually used to do that in the store that he worked at. We both worked for the same company for a while. We were both managers. One of the things he used to do is he would give out candy bars to people. He had this thing called our official title was specialist. We were specialists in certain things. At first we were tech specialists, and then I think we turned into sales specialists. They kept changing what came before specialists. We were always specialists, but we were still managers. We were key carriers. And so he had this thing called Stump the Specialist, where if they could ask him a question about any product in the store that they sold. And I think he might have limited it just to the tech items that we actually had to sell, as opposed to like paper and stuff that people just picked up because they needed it. He would give him a candy bar, and he would literally go to Sam's Club and buy these massive, like 50 or 100 piece boxes of candy bars, and he would just give them out. And he had an exceptionally motivated team. Not because candy bars were that hard. They sold the candy bars in this as a store. It wasn't like these people couldn't get candy bars, but giving them something physical was a really big deal. And it was a significantly better motivator than money. Now, there have been some studies that have shown things another reason why money is not a great motivator is tying money to actual work performed is actually remarkably difficult for most people because if you're paid hourly, you get a paycheck no matter what you do during the week. If you come into work and stare at the wall for 8 hours a day and then go home, or if you come in and reorganize the entire store in a week, you're going to get the same paycheck, and the paycheck comes at the same time every week or every other week or every month, however you get paid. There's nothing that indicates what you did was any better or worse. And even if there are incentives built in, because it is completely it is a completely different event from the event that actually occurred. In our minds, it's actually really difficult for us to get the idea that, money is because I did this. Even if you get a pay raise for good work, well, yes, you're getting paid more, but that paycheck comes completely separate from the work. A lot of people get their paychecks on their days off, so they're not even working when they get the reward. And so your brain has to go through all these extra steps to tie the money to the actual work that you performed. They have shown some studies that, and this is where the idea of motivated, the definition can vary wildly. They've done studies that have shown that commission-based employees are significantly more motivated to work than hourly employees. If you look at sales employees that get an hourly paycheck do not put forth anywhere near as much work to make a sale as a commission-based employee, because a commission-based employee doesn't get paid unless they make sales, and for every sale they make, they get paid. There's a direct one-to-one relationship with that. They close the sale, they get a paycheck, and they can see specifically how that gets. They may not get the paycheck for a little while, so there's that disconnect, but there's a much easier connection. However, there is an issue with the idea of, well, that means that they're motivated. Technically, yes, but under that same definition of motivation, violence is an incredibly effective motivational process. Threatening to kill someone or threatening someone's life can make them work harder than they have ever worked in their life because they don't want to die. So in the idea that putting them in a situation where their livelihood, or sometimes their life, like again, I worked in 100% commission-based sales, and I worked insanely hard. There was one point when everybody else in the region that I used to do in-store demonstrations. That was my commission, where I would go to stores. There would be this little booth that was set up, and I would do in-store demos of kitchen gadgets. I had one that I did was called it was a cheese grater thing. I can't remember what it was called, but you could literally grate eggs and pickles and stuff, and literally grate your own egg salad. It was the weirdest thing in the world. And then I did this thing called it was a chopper. It was a hand crank food processor kind of thing. So I did these demonstrations, and I only got paid when I sold machines. I worked insanely hard to the point where when everyone else in my district quit because the manager of that district was a dipshit and didn't understand how to motivate her people, they basically told me, well, we can actually run the district with only one person. I'm like, how does that work? We have contracts with these stores where we are supposed to man these posts like 10 hours a day. And generally our contracts are for 2 or 3 weeks. I can't work 10 hours a day for 2 or 3 weeks. Like, I'm not going to work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. He said, oh, no. See, what we can do is the least amount of days we can do this is just over a week. So what we would do is you would get in the store on the first day of our contract, you would work for a full week, and then you would work for another 6 days. So you would work for a grand total of 14 days, which is to 2 weeks, which is the smallest contract we can have. And then we would just give you 5 days off, or 4 days off or something like that, and then you would do it again. So we wouldn't technically be breaking Wisconsin labor laws, because as long as we had the start and end dates at the right time, so they fit in the week a certain way, we could ensure that you were never working too long to break labor laws, and then we could do that. And I said, no, but I considered it. For 3 or 4 days, I'm sitting there going, I guess this is what I have to do, because in my mind, it was that or be homeless. I had rent to pay. I had, food to buy. And that just shows you how effective a motivator, the idea of, hey, you don't sell, you don't eat. So yes, from an idea of, will it make you work harder? Yes. Commission-based, 100% commission-based as a sales tends to be an incredible motivator in making you work hard, in the same way that putting a gun to someone's head is also an incredible motivator. They will work very, very hard to not die. However, burnout and turnover in commission-based, 100% commissions as a sales is massively high, and turnover is bad for a company. Every time you hire an employee, it costs you a lot of money. Every time you fire an employee or lose an employee, it costs you a lot of money. If your turnover rate is high, you are literally costing your business generally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, just from turnover, not from anything else in this in whatever business you're doing. Turnover will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if it's a really big company, it can cost you millions. The numbers, and this is again, we're going back 6-ish years now, back to when I was still in school. The numbers back then it was somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $18,000 to $20,000 is what it costs to hire a new employee. When you factor in additional training and the mistakes that they're going to make and everything, in general, it's going to come to, on average, for most businesses, about 18 to 20 grand to fire an employee. When again, you factor in all the stuff of being short-staffed and dealing with HR, and then any possible lawsuits that come up because of it, like workers' comp and stuff like that. Nothing like illegal, but dealing with workers' comp things, and the fact that if your turnover is too high and too many people are getting workman's comp, the business actually has to pay more for their workman's comp insurance and all that. It turns out to be about 30 grand to fire someone. So to hire and fire someone, it's about $50,000 on average. And this is 6 years ago. I have no idea what it is now. It probably has gone up. So if your turnover is like 4 people a year, just 4 people that you have to hire every single year, that is $200,000 that you are wasting. So yes, while that quote unquote motivation, the idea that commission-based sales do have a higher motivation to get their sales, that is not the motivation that I am referring to when I say good motivations. That is simply, they work very hard. Effective motivation, in my book and in most of the management books I have read, involves them wanting to come to work as opposed to needing to come to work. So yeah, getting this all back to Critical Role. It relatively recently, like last year, came out that Critical Role is the highest earning channel on Twitch as far as subscriptions are concerned, by a decent margin. And a lot of people got very, very upset because I think over 2 or 3 years, just from subscriptions, that's ignoring merchandising, that's ignoring any sponsorships, donations, things like that. Like, this is just their subscription numbers, as far as I'm aware. Though it might also contain bit donations, because both of those are paid out. This is the same time. Critical Role made something like $10 million, which seems like a crap ton of money. It really isn't for a business. Again, if anyone was shocked by the fact that, wow, hiring a person costs $20,000, yeah, it does. You probably never knew that. It cost more to hire and fire me than I have ever earned in a single year. Ever. In the entirety of my working career, I have never made enough money to hire and fire myself. Ever. That will blow a lot of people's minds. So when you look at that, 10 million isn't really that big a deal for an entire company. So yeah, a lot of people got really, really upset because they viewed Critical Role as this little underdog to the channel, and they were fighting the power and they were making their way in this really antagonistic world, and then they found out, oh, they're the #1 subscribed channel on to Twitch, and they're making millions. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. They all look poor. They're supposed to be poor like me. No. First of all, no one. I saw in the replies to this, the people going, they're millionaires. They can be as motivated as they want. They don't have to work. That's a bold-faced lie. All of them are working voice actors. If you wonder about that, how many times have you seen Laura Bailey and Ashley Johnson at things like the Game Awards for all the things that they're in? Matthew Mercer is in everything. Laura Bailey is also in everything. Ashley Johnson was on TV. I can't remember if her show is still going on or not, but she is in a ton of different games. Liam O'Brien is in everything. Taliesin is in a crap ton of games. Like, I will play games and I'll go, oh my god, that's Taliesin. Oh my god, that's Matt. I just finished The Amazing Spider-Man on PS5. Matt shows up in that game so many times, and I'm pretty sure Taliesin is in there too. And Liam might be in there as well. Liam can change his voice so much that I don't recognize all the characters he plays. Travis is in tons of games. Like, they're all working voice actors. If they were millionaires, do you really think they would be doing this many things? Especially since most of the work that they do is bit work. Like, Laura Bailey gets really, really big roles, and so does Ashley Johnson. And so does Matt Mercer on a fairly regular basis. But the roles that he played in Spider-Man were, beat cop number 2. I'm not kidding here. He was the voice of a couple of the cops in there. That's not a well-paying gig. These are not, Will Smith or Leonardo DiCaprio level payments to these guys. They are workers. They're not millionaires. None of them are millionaires. None of them have ever been millionaires. And they work multiple jobs because most of them do something for Critical Role. And then they also are professional voice actors, which a lot of people don't realize is more than just talking into a microphone. The audition process itself is mind-numbingly painful because you submit audition after audition after audition after audition after audition. When I was in college the first time, I went for a theater degree because that was going to pay well. And the thing that my director told me is one of the reasons and my advisor, one of the reasons I loved him as a professor was just like an actor's job is to audition. A lot of people think an actor's job is to act and to provide these amazing. No, that's the payoff. Your real job is auditioning. In a year, if I do 50 auditions in a year and I get 2 roles, that was a good year for me. And a lot of actors do a lot more than 50 auditions a year. 50 auditions is less than 1 audition a week. Most working actors I know are doing 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 or 7 auditions a week to get 1 or 2 roles. And a lot of times those roles are only bit parts. It is an incredibly demanding job. It requires a lot of time. So no, these people are not millionaires. And as I have said over this entire 40-minute long video now, money is a really poor motivator. If the only reason they were doing this is because they were getting paid a shit ton of money, the quality would suffer. They would not be doing it 5 years later because there's significantly easier ways to get more money. There are. And yeah, that's why everyone has this idea, and this is especially prevalent with people that are underpaid, which is a large portion of the population. I'm not talking about living wage or anything like that. I'm talking about the idea of the value that you add to your company is significantly less than what they are paying you. I know this from personal experience. When I was a sales manager, I was the number one salesman in one of the busiest districts of the entire multinational company. I think at one point, I don't think I ever made the top 10, but I think I was in like the top 20 of the entire company, of which they had thousands of stores with dozens of employees each. So I was the best in the district, one of the best in the company. I was also the lowest paid specialist in the company. I was massively underpaid because I never even asked for a raise. It was the craziest thing in the world when I finally got the balls up and I went to my boss and said, hey, I need a raise. If you don't give me a raise, I have to find a new job because I can't afford my rent under this. He says, how much you want? I think I quoted him like $13 an hour. And he was able to come back with a $11.25, which was less than what I wanted, but it was enough for me to keep going. And that was I was making $9. I was making like $9, a little over $9 an hour. So that was a massive boost compared to what I was making. And I literally went from the lowest paid specialist in the company to the highest paid, because the reason he couldn't offer me any higher is because the company limits how much you're allowed to pay specialists. I was at the maximum amount I was allowed to be paid. The only way I could make more money was to get promoted, which I eventually intended to do, and unfortunately, a different boss. That guy was super. His name was Fred. He was the best boss I ever had. Eventually, I went to another store after working for another company for a little bit, and my boss there actually actively tried to sabotage me from getting promoted, because if I got promoted and left his store would collapse because I was the only person selling anything, because he wouldn't allow me to train the rest of the staff on how to sell. It was not an enjoyable place. The guy closed the store. Like, that particular store doesn't exist anymore. And for good reason too. Like, the guy was a complete utter fucking moron. And was just sleazy and horrible and disgusting, and yeah, don't like the guy. But anyway, back to the topic. So the idea of money as a motivator, especially for people that are underpaid, they think, damn, if I was paid that much, I would work harder. The fact of the matter is, no, you wouldn't. We've got tons of studies and examples that show, no, you wouldn't. More money will simply give you a little bit of a boost. But if you really want motivated employees, just giving them more money is never a good idea. And the more times you reward them with money, the more they expect money, and the less they will value other forms of motivation, which means you now lose the most effective forms of motivation to give a significantly less effective motivation. And what eventually happens is they either become complacent and do the absolute bare minimum to get their paycheck, or they quit. Those are the only two things you ever get when money is your sole motivating factor. I'm not saying people should not be paid what they're worth. They definitely should. Being underpaid is a fantastic demotivator. It is one of the most effective ways to ensure that your employees don't work for you. I am an outlier in the fact that I was severely underpaid and worked insanely hard to prove myself worthy of being paid what I should have been paid from the beginning. I'm an outlier in that, and part of that is probably to an abuse survivor mentality, to be blunt. I'm used to people treating me like shit and having to earn affection and the things like that. My first girlfriend taught me that very well. Yeah, I'm an outlier. Most people, if you underpay them, are not going to do well. But if you think money is going to motivate people to work hard, it's not. Paying them too little will motivate them to quit or to not try at all. But paying them more doesn't actually translate to more work or better work or even just more motivation to actually come to work or want to work. None of that. There's there's very, very weak correlation between the idea of more money and actually getting better quality work. The best forms of motivations generally are learning what your employees actually value. The idea of there's a book out there called, I think it's like the 5 or 6 love languages. I can't remember how many it is. Half the book is nonsense. It's absolute just malarkey that is meant to just make people buy a book. However, the idea of love languages, the idea that there are certain things that people respond to differently and shows your affection and appreciation in different ways, that is 100% accurate. That has been proven in psychology. You see it a lot. Different people value different things. And when you're talking about motivation, you need to learn what motivates your employees. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. One of the most effective things I learned, and I didn't learn this in business school because, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the stuff I learned in business school was completely worthless. We learned about personality typing. I read an entire chapter. I spent 3 hours on personality typing. Took an egregious amount of notes. You know those things where strongly disagree, somewhat agree. Those things where they give you a personality type, those four letter personality types, those are completely worthless. They're not accurate in any way, shape, or form. They're about as accurate as a coin flip. They are pointless. However, I had an entire section of this book, an entire section of the test about personality types. And the last paragraph, which was only a single sentence, so the last sentence of this entire chapter that had an entire section of the final on it said, oh, by the way, they found out that these personality typing and the things like that are about as accurate at predicting a good employee, which is what they were designed to do. Like, that was the entire reason any of these things exist. The Myers-Briggs personality test, that was paid for by Walmart and a couple other companies back in the 80s. And they spent tens of millions of dollars on the research. And it was done specifically to weed out bad employees. The actual effectiveness at weeding out bad employees or identifying good employees is about as accurate as a coin flip, meaning it is completely random. There's no value to them whatsoever. Even in psychology, there is such limited value in them because they're incredibly inaccurate and they don't actually measure your personality. They generally tend to measure what you think people want you to say in that particular situation. So your Myers-Briggs personality type can change by the hour and can change depending on who is administering the test, what the test is for. It's insanely inaccurate. So the idea of love languages or just languages that people tend to understand is, this is what means something valuable to me. This is how I understand affection and appreciation and things like that, can be extremely useful. And like, as I was saying before, one of the most useful things that I learned from one of my bosses was simply, like, Jody, when's the last time that you talked to the cashiers? I said, hi this morning. He said, but when did you actually talk to the cashiers? I don't know. I've been kind of busy today. He's like, doesn't matter. Go out and talk to the cashiers. Or what should I ask them? I guess I could quiz them on our new replacement plans, because I don't know if they know those. No. Go talk to them. See what's going on. Get to know them. That is the most important, valuable management advice I've ever gotten in my life. because the most effective way to motivate your employees is to actually learn who your employees are. Talk to them. Find out what they like, what they don't like. When you start trying to motivate them to do their job better, use a bunch of different things and find out which ones they like the best, which ones they react to the best, which sometimes isn't the same thing. Some people like certain things, but they react significantly better to other things. In general, positive motivation is significantly more useful than negative motivation. Punishments generally tend to be counterproductive and are only really useful in deterring certain really, really bad behaviors. In general, the best way to motivate your employees is positive reinforcement. Give them good things when they do good things. Punishments in general just don't work. So, yes, I realize this has been a really long video, but I have a degree in this stuff, and as a trainer, this is an exceptionally important part of training, is learning your employees. As a dungeon master, learning your players and finding out what they like and what they don't like is essential to running a good game. And the same is true of players. Learning what your DM likes and what your DM doesn't like is essential to having a good time, because if your DM is having a good time, you are having a good time, and vice versa. If the players are having a good time, the DM should be having a good time. There are some situations where it's not a one-to-one correlation. But, yeah, doesn't matter where you are. Learn what actual motivation is good. Money is not a good motivator. It never has been. It never will be, because money is a middleman. Money is a middleman to either things or power and prestige. Money gives you both of those the things. What you need to figure out is, what do people actually like? Is it the power and prestige? Is it the things? Is it something different? Is it companionship? Is it just relationships? I will say 100% right now, don't have relationships like actual romantic relationships with your employees ever. It's a massively bad idea. I don't care how close you've become over this sales weekend or something like that. Never date your employees. It's always going to end poorly. And that's especially true about physical intimacy. Don't do it. It's a super bad idea. There is never an upside to this. Ever. And I don't care how many people go, well, my mom, married her boss, and they've been together for 37 years. I don't care. That was an outlier. It was a mistake. Don't date your employees. Don't have sex with your employees. Don't do anything romantic with your employees. Treat them platonically. Treat them as if they are your brother or sister, and you have, the idea of doing anything romantic with them is revolting to you. Don't treat them like brothers and sisters. I had interesting relationships with my brother and sister throughout my life, and had I treated employees like I treated my brother and sister, I probably wouldn't have had too many. But anyway, yes, form relationships with the people that you want to motivate, whether it is from a management perspective, whether it is from being a dungeon master, being a player, or just wanting to be able to motivate your friends to do good in the world, to excel at what they did to do. All of it requires understanding what actually motivates them and not relying on money. Money is such, pardon the puns, money is such a cheap way to try and gain motivation. And it doesn't work most of the time. And the very few times it does work, it is fleeting, and the diminishing returns are massive. So anyway, that was my little rant about stuff that is important to me. I hope you guys have found this interesting. I hope other people find this interesting. I normally don't do this on my little rants, but I do want this information out there. So like, subscribe, turn notifications on, and comment. Share this video everywhere. I want people to understand this idea. Money is not a good motivator. It had never been a good motivator. And just because you are not getting enough money doesn't mean that if you had more money, you would want to do more things. It doesn't. I have seen it hundreds and hundreds of times in many different businesses where someone goes, well, if I was just paid better, I would work harder. No, you wouldn't. That is a bold-faced fallacy. It's a way for you to justify getting more money, which you might deserve. I'm not saying anyone that wants more money is somehow wrong or something. No, a lot of businesses underpay their employees. What I'm saying is money is a terrible motivator, and just because they give you more money does not mean you're going to work harder for them. In fact, most information I'm aware of says that money will make you work less hard for them, especially if it is the sole motivator. Anyway, that is all for me today. I will see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.